Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. As you can see, I'm joined by James Benge in a very fetching orange jumper today. You're not going to miss James, are you, when he's wearing that? How you going, mate? All good? Ready for the start of the Premier League this weekend?
So ready. It's been a slog, hasn't it? It's been a long, baffling fortnight with stories that apparently don't make the cut for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. On take two of it, we are
Let's
not
not
allowed
go
to
there again.
discuss.
Let's not go there again.
One day when we do a live show or whatever, we can share that story, but not today.
No, I couldn't continue, mate. I couldn't continue. You threw me so much that I genuinely lost all track of what I was talking about and had to start again. Fortunately, everyone, we're only about 3 minutes into it, and it wasn't after about 25 minutes, because that would have been a little bit of a struggle. Yes, it has been a long, drawn-out international break. Not much has gone on during it, I don't think. Although saying that, I did watch the Wales game, as usual, with the Welsh language on Wednesday night, I think it was, and I saw Harry Wilson smacking a banger, and I thoroughly enjoyed the half an hour of that I watched. But aside from that, I didn't really watch
What
too much football, I have to say, during the international break.
when you listen to it and watch it in Welsh, is the commentary sort of an English style commentary
No,
in
no, it's
Welsh,
just the
or do
names.
we? Oh, it's just entirely just the names.
You just hear the names. It's the only word you
Yeah,
can,
but when there's a goal, it doesn't go sort of all South American, does it? And there's sort of 30
no,
seconds. Go,
I
go, go.
suppose. No, that would be that would be funny.
Well,
No, it is very much I get what you mean now. It is kind of in the more English style of commentary, but with the I'm becoming quite used to it now. I tend to end up doing that because when there's no other games on and I flick through and I see Wales are at home, I know they'll be on that channel, and so I always go and have a look at it. And it was actually a really good game. It was Iceland, and it was end to end, and obviously they knew that if Turkey lost and Wales won, that they were going to go through, and so you could hear the crowd were getting into it because Turkey went 3-1 behind. And no, it was a good game. It was decent. I didn't watch too much of the England match. Obviously, it was a game of two halves, wasn't it? I was listening to the first half and then caught a little bit of the second half, saw a couple of the goals going, blinked and missed a couple of them as well at the rate that they were going in. But very much ready for the return of the Premier League now. Very much ready for the absolute anger and rage that is going to be greeted by some of the players who pulled out of England action playing for their clubs this weekend. Can't wait for the reaction to that, which is absolutely guaranteed, no doubt. And we will talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But what have you been up to last 2 weeks? Anything interesting to keep you entertained ahead of the Premier League? Did you get
honestly,
Glastonbury tickets? Did you get Glastonbury tickets? I saw you were in the queue.
I didn't try this year.
I thought
I
you were
don't
in
know
the
if my
queue.
friends. No, well, so I was in the queue for someone else, and therefore wasn't. Hate to admit it, but Rashid, if you're watching, I wasn't trying that hard. No, not this year. A lot of my friends who I would attend Glastonbury with have bigger things going on in their lives. So no this year, and then it's fallow year next year, which is obviously the World Cup as well. So who knows when I'll ever be back at Glastonbury? And all the guys that were sort of stood behind me at Janelle Monáe, you'll have to find a different podcaster to watch your bands with this year, I'm afraid.
Well, how can you top the Sugar Babes, mate? How do you top the Sugar Babes? Yeah, not much going on for me. I'm selling my house. Got an open house on Saturday, which I've never had before, and so I've been busy trying to make the place look remotely respectable for that one final push tomorrow, which is why I'm not going to be able to make it at Mikel's press conference. Yeah, it is horrible, but it is very much needed. So I'm sucking up the pain.
As you know, but maybe our audience doesn't. We've been in the same situation, and there comes a moment when you can't put things in the garage. You can't. Well, we don't have a garage. You can't take things to other people's houses. And it just has to go in the car.
Yeah, well, mine went in the car for the photos from the estate agent taking the photos. My car was absolutely piled up, like literally piled up.
Let me let you in to a secret. It's never getting unpiled. And I know you've got kids to fit in the back of that car. They're just going to have to fit in around the box of wine glasses or whatever it is you needed to hide away. 2 months later, our car is still, and we haven't even had viewings for, in a good way, hopefully. We haven't even had viewings for the past month, and you're never going to empty that car until you move into your new place.
My boot is still full of the stuff I put in there for the photos, just because I know the open house is coming this time. But honestly, I've done so many trips to the tip. Fortunately, I know my wife doesn't watch this show, or listen to the podcast, because I've thrown away so much stuff that she and my kids don't know about, that I've thrown out. It's just like when they're not being here, it's like, right, I'm not having this in the house anymore. I am just getting rid of it. And have they noticed? Absolutely not. And they will never notice either. But if I'd have asked them, they'd have been like, you can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of that. So I've used this as an opportunity to declutter massively. Right, let's talk about football anyway, because we're 5.5 minutes in. I'm sure we've probably lost a hell of a lot of viewers who have tuned in to listen to us waffle about Arsenal. So we will do that. We'll talk about this game at the weekend. Biggest game of the season, James. Absolutely biggest, most important game of Arsenal's season on Saturday. 100% in my view. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Leandro Trossard, new contract. Sammy writing a story today that Arsenal in talks with Trossard over extending his stay. So we're going to talk about that. Got a couple of questions on it as well. Lots of other questions that people have sent in. Some predictions for the next run of games as well, which are always fun. So plenty to get stuck into. But let's start with this man, Leandro Trossard, who, it's all about timing, isn't it, with these things? Say this story comes out the day after he'd just come off the bench to score the winner against Villa at the start of the season. When everyone's clambering for him to start the next game, which it was at the time, it was like, Martinelli can't start. You have to start Trossard. Trossard, Arsenal's best finisher, absolute killer, and was the talk of the town after that Villa game. And he's had a poor run of form, no doubt about it, in recent weeks. And now this story comes out, and you see some of the immediate reaction to it is not gone down too well. So, I mean, look, I've got a couple of questions here or comments here. Like Aurora Freaks in touch said, I hope you two are both doing fine. I have a question regarding Leo. Sammy's just released an article where he states Arsenal are looking to give him a new deal with big pay rise. I'm not quite sure if it's the right call or not. What's your opinions? Aaron talks about it as well. Goes into it kind of in length. You can read the question if you're watching on YouTube here. I won't go through it all because it's pretty long. He's saying he's kind of all right with it, but he's worried if Arsenal go into next season with just Leo and Martinelli as the left wing depth, is that going to be strong enough again? So where do you stand on Leo's new contract, if he does indeed sign this new contract? How would you view it from an Arsenal point of view?
Without wishing to play it safe, I think it would kind of have to depend for me on the numbers. We should bear in mind from the outset that Trossard is not particularly well paid by Arsenal standards.
He's on about £90,000 a week.
So
which isn't massive for Arsenal.
Big pay rise to that. If someone offered you a third extra on your salary, take you up to 120k, I mean, everyone would describe that as a big pay rise, but it still would have you in the lower mid part of Arsenal earners. And I think if you gave him another 2 years on top of what he's got, I think that would be fine. If the approach is that Trossard goes from being your main backup, wide guy, main backup forward, to maybe the sort of third or fourth off the bench. He goes from the Trossard role he has now to something more like a Raheem Sterling, Reece Nelson style role as he gets older. I think that for the money is absolutely fine, because otherwise you've got to, if you don't extend Trossard, you have to pay money and pay wages to find someone like Trossard. So I think that's absolutely fine. I don't think it would be one that they would, would deserve the bells and whistles. And I don't think it would necessarily be one that would preclude Trossard from maybe one day looking at Saudi Arabia as well, if that would interest him. We know that there was interest. It doesn't always stick with Saudi clubs. I think it's fine. Yeah, it makes sense. He'll be useful for a few more years, won't he?
Yeah, well, he's 29 now. 17 goals last season. He's on a bad run of form. Again, I just think this all comes down to time and the immediate reaction of it, because he has struggled. He has not had a good start to the season. Obviously, he got himself sent off against Man City. He contributed to Saliba getting sent off, which ended up resulting in Arsenal losing the game against Bournemouth. He's only got himself a couple of goals so far. Hasn't scored in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games, I think it is now. So he's had a poor season so far. But again, I still think you go back to this story comes out after the Villa game, when everyone was desperate for him to start the next match. And, just on the back of a 17-goal season where he came up with really, really important goals in that season for Arsenal. I think the viewpoint now would be very, very different. So, he's still 29. He's not a player who's ever really relied on his pace. So I don't see him sort of losing that. He is very, very good in front of goal, even if he's struggling a little bit confidence-wise at the moment. So I don't look at it as it would be a disastrous decision to give him a new deal. And I think you're right. If you don't if you don't offer Leo a contract and he ends up going, then you've obviously got to replace him. But this would come in a time when you're looking to sign someone already in that position who would potentially be first choice. Because then, you know, so you're then having to buy maybe a first choice left winger and then a third choice left winger at the same time. You know, I don't think giving Leo a new contract stops Arsenal going out and signing Nico Williams if he becomes available in the summer, does it? And he's also
And starts playing better.
Yeah, and he's also a player who plays in multiple positions as well. So, and he's which is very, very handy. So, yeah, my opinion on it is I don't think it'd be a bad decision at all. I think the one thing is you mentioned the Saudi Arabia interest. You know, if say a Saudi club comes in with 40 million, 30 million, 40 million for Leo in the summer, would you accept
take
that?
it.
I would probably take that then, because then you've got the money coming in to potentially get yourself a replacement as well, and so that would help. But if that interest doesn't materialize again, I mean, would this a new contract, would that stop that interest from Saudi? Do you think necessarily?
Not really. And I mean, I did some more digging into this in the sort of weeks after. The impression I got was that Trossard was not particularly high on the list at PIF and at Al Ittihad, and you sort of have these two separate lists there. One that the owners have and the clubs submit the players they want. And Trossard was a little bit lower down on Al Ittihad's list of priorities, but other players didn't materialise. And I think the challenge with a player of Trossard's quality and repute and Saudi Arabia is he's never going to be he's probably never going to be the guy they want first and foremost. You know, they will try and get their Mo Salahs, their Messis, their Sons, that sort of guy before they'd look at a Trossard. So I think, and I just think last season or last summer, given how well Trossard was playing and just the shortage of options, that Raheem Sterling hadn't been, was the only guy that had come in. I think it made sense to not take the money, but I think maybe next year, if he's lower down your depth chart and someone says, here's 20 million for him, I think it becomes a lot more sensible to sell than when he's your first reserve forward. I don't think it made sense then.
No. I mean, 17 goals last season. It was a pretty stellar season from Trossard last season, especially with not being a regular starter. And you go back to that sort of run-in when you're going for the title. He scores in the win at Wolves. He scores first goal in the win against Chelsea. Scores at Bournemouth. Scores the winner at Old Trafford. All in that run. So he was coming up really, really big moments. He came off the bench to get the equaliser against Bayern Munich. Didn't need to in the 2-2 draw in the first leg at the Champions League. These are really big goals in big moments for Arsenal, and that wasn't like 3 or 4 seasons ago. That was last season. We're not even in December yet. Now, he's not going to have lost that. He's just in a bad run of form, isn't it? So, yeah, I just don't really see the issue in it, mainly as long as it, again, and I don't think necessarily giving him a pay rise to basically protect yourself, which I kind of think it would be from an Arsenal point of view, because he would have a year left after this. If you give him that pay rise, it's not massive, but is a decent pay rise, but you still have the opportunity to possibly cash in if a good bid comes in, then I would take it. I don't really see the issue with it, because I don't see people who are saying, oh, like Aaron there was talking about it in the second half of it, when he was saying that he doesn't really want to just have Martinelli and Trossard again next season as the kind of left-sided options. I don't think that would be the case. I don't think Trossard signing a new contract would stop Arsenal, as I said, going out and potentially bringing in another first choice for that position. I just don't really see it. So, yeah, it's not the worst. It wouldn't be the worst decision. I wouldn't be like you said. I don't think it's one that you'd be dancing around the maypole celebrating as a contract like a Saliba or a Saka. But I think it'd just be a perfectly acceptable, sensible piece of business from Arsenal to keep a player who's, has shown and proven he can score goals at the very top level. And let's face it, Arsenal don't have too many of those at the moment.
Back of the packet math says it's about 9 million more it would cost. I don't think you would get anyone usable for Arsenal at £9 million. The only other thing, can I just say while we're talking Trossard, keep the guy on the bench. It just suits him. It really suits his skill set. And I think Trossard, as much as anyone, needs to learn and understand that. You can be a legend at a football club and a very effective footballer predominantly playing off the bench.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to see that as well now, aren't we? Because
Yeah.
Odegaard's back, obviously, and I think we're going to go back to seeing Trossard used sometimes from the start, but more often than not as a substitute. And he's proven beyond doubt that in that role he is unbelievably handy, and Arsenal's best player in the squad in that role, coming on to make a difference. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly understandable decision from Arsenal if this new contract does materialise and he does sign it. Right, moving on. Shall we talk about this weekend's game now? As I mentioned at the start, I can't wait for the outrage when the injured players come back. If they come back, we don't know yet. Obviously, Mikel's got his press conference tomorrow. He's not going to admit if anyone's going to come back, I imagine. We saw the video yesterday from training, which Kieran Tierney was in. Did you see that? The snow was out. The snow was out, and Kieran Tierney returned. He was wearing
What's
gloves.
the opposite of hibernation?
He was wearing gloves though, and long sleeves and long trousers. What was that about? It's a new Kieran Tierney. You had to sort of do a double take. Is that really him? Surely not. But it was Kieran Tierney. But yeah, we'll wait and see what the sort of latest team news update is on Saka and Declan Rice. We know that Ben White's out, obviously. Calafiori, Tomiyasu could potentially be back. Trossard, who we've just been speaking about, obviously limped off for Belgium during the international break, so he could miss out as well. So lots of question marks over Arsenal's fitness. How are you envisaging the reaction of some of our pals in the media, shall we say, if Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka both start for Arsenal at the weekend?
Yeah, I wouldn't say measured. I think that will be fair to say. What's so weird about that is, and I would think Harry Kane would understand this too, this whole period with Lee Carsley, the under-21 manager in charge, and when the game's a little bit competitive and a little bit important, but they're not going to change England's world. Surely the whole point of these games is to have a look at other players. By all accounts, Curtis Jones was fantastic in Greece. Noni Madueke as well put together a really compelling case to be involved. And I think you're doing Thomas Tuchel much more of a favour over November and over October if you sort of get Curtis Jones and get Madueke and get Harwood Bellis, Morgan Gibbs-White, get them round the England squad, see how they fare, and build that sort of understanding for them so that when Tuchel comes in, he can hit the ground running. Like Thomas Tuchel, of all coaches, is not going to need to learn how good Declan Rice is because he's always trying to sign him. He's not going to need to learn how good Harry Kane is or, weirdly, Eric Dyer is. What he would need is to see how these fringe players fare in an England shirt. And I think whether Saka proves himself to have been fit or not during the international break, and I'd say the same for Cole Palmer, it's really good for England and for Arsenal that these guys get a break when they can, and it's very rare that they can. So, and the same for Norway and Martin Odegaard. So if this fortnight just means they can recuperate a little bit, ease the other aches and pains in them as well as their injuries, fantastic. Great use of time. Much better than sending them to Athens or sending them to Wembley. I think it's going to work really well. So I hope someone else agrees with me on that, but I suspect it might only be guys like you that agree with me.
I absolutely agree with you. I was so surprised at Kane's comments, and I do wonder what Saka and Rice must have thought of him, because obviously he didn't name any names, but you're kind of tarring everyone with the same brush, and some people might have taken advantage of the fact that Tuchel wasn't there and just sort of cried off and thought they wanted 2 weeks. But you're talking about two players, certainly from Arsenal point of view. Saka was taken off for half an hour to go against Chelsea with the game at 1-1. You don't do that unless you're injured. If you don't take Saka off at that point when you're desperately trying to win a game. And obviously Declan Rice was exactly the same. So it's not like that they finished the game for Arsenal and then cried off. They couldn't finish the match for Arsenal. They were clearly injured and missed the final half an hour of a really important game. And so I just wonder what they thought of it. They were just like, I bet they were like, oh, cheers, Harry. Thanks, mate, for that. It's, and he was the one talking about the sort of unit that had been built up under Gareth Southgate. And he thought it was unfair that maybe some people were taking advantage of the fact that he wasn't there anymore. But I thought if anyone did any damage to those comments, it was Harry Kane. But it's not going to stop the outrage this weekend. I mean, it's just going to stir it up even more.
If I was Bukayo Saka, I'd be like, oh, you've got plenty to say now, haven't you? When I spent most of the Euros carrying you, same Declan Rice as well. These guys were slogging the hard yards while Harry Kane was 10 yards short of the penalty area when they needed him most.
Yeah, absolutely. It could have been good if he'd had cried out at the Euros because he clearly wasn't fit in that game, but he played not fit, and in that tournament played not fit, and England suffered as a result of it. So, yeah, it's. Do you reckon both of them will be involved? What's your hunch? Do you think you'll see them on Saturday?
I think both of them will be in the matchday squad, playing it safe there. Saka, I think he might have to be, because I agree with you. It's such a massive game, because it's a game that they could drop points, and they just can't afford to do that for a long time.
Forest unbeaten so far away from home in the Premier League. 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 at Anfield. Only team to beat Liverpool this season. It's not going to be easy. You know, this is classic Nuno, isn't it? This is go back. Remember that Nuno team for Wolves when you'd come up against them, especially at the Emirates, you come up against them, and it was just a real grind all the time. Do you remember that game when Arsenal won it 2-1? It was when both teams were going for the top 4 at that point. It must have been February time, and Wolves were winning for ages. Then Pepe came off the bench, scored, and then Laka got a deflected goal in the last minute. Place went absolutely mental. It was a brilliant ending. And it was that sort of, Wolves got a lead, and then you just of all the teams to fall behind to, you don't want to be falling behind to Wolves. And they had the threat of Traore on the counter attack and everything like that. And he's built a very similar sort of outfit at Forest now. Excellent defensively. I know they struggled against Newcastle in that second half before the international break, but you know what you're going to get from this Forest team. Very good defensively, quick and dangerous on the counter attack. It's not going to be easy, and it's the biggest game of the season for Arsenal, because this is this patch of results now. If Arsenal want to turn things around and get themselves into the title race, this run of fixtures up to New Year is just so crucial, and they have to start finding some form and finding some momentum. And you drop points here, the game immediately after international break at home to Forest, and Liverpool win. Yeah, it's almost curtains, really. You absolutely have to win this game and find some confidence and find some momentum that you can build into these next 7 games, because it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I was writing about that this week. I know everyone is rightly skeptical about Liverpool, but I think people have to realise, when you're 9 points ahead of someone, you don't have to be as good as you've been to keep that advantage going. I mean, I sort of did some rough maths, and I had, I don't want to go, the XG stuff will bore you, but Liverpool look a little bit like the Arsenal team of 22-23. And if they played at that level for the remainder of this season, they'd end up at around the 88-point mark. For Arsenal to catch that, they would need to hit 98-point pace over a 38-game season. Nearly 100-point pace, which they've done before. They did it for the 19 games in the second half of last season, but having done it before doesn't mean it's easy to do again. So there's just no room, especially right now, for slip-ups, because there comes a moment where you just won't be able to rouse yourself for a title challenge, no matter what you say, no matter what your manager says. I think if that gap were to hit 11, 12, beyond that, I think it almost doesn't matter what you're capable of and what Liverpool's lower limit is. You just can't convince yourself you can do it. The belief goes and ebbs away. So you need to build that belief, and you need to kind of come out of the next 6 games with 16 points.
I think there's 7 games between now and New Year. I think you've got to have, at the very minimum, 19 points, but I think 21. You get 21 points out of those 7 games. I think you go into January 1st, probably 4 or 5 points off Liverpool, something like that, and then that's entirely doable at that point. You've dragged them back in a little bit, and it's not, you are firmly in the title race at that point. But I think that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to maybe 19, but aim for 21. It's hard. 7 wins in a row in the Premier League is hard. It doesn't matter who you're playing against, but we know this Arsenal team can put a run on. But that's why this game is just so important, because I'm not expecting them to fly out the blocks and blow Forest away. It's going to be a real grind. This is an Arsenal team. I haven't won in 4 games in the Premier League. Confidence is low. They're all coming back from international duty. It's not going to be a pretty game, I don't think, at the weekend. It never really is against a Nuno side. So they've just got to grind it out, get a win, just get that winning feeling back, so everyone can go to Colney the next day and shoulders are just lifted a little bit. It's like, finally, we got 3 points on the board, and let's go. I mean, looking at the team selection, obviously we don't know who's going to be fit yet. It's hard. There's so many question marks over so many players. I've gone with this as a sort of predicted 11 for it, and that's presuming that Calafiori is fit and that Saka is fit and that Rice is fit. I've put the three of them in the team. Obviously, no Ben White, so I've gone Timber, and I'm adamant that even if Calafiori is not fit, you find one of the other left backs to play left back. You do not play Timber, and you don't bring Partey back to right back. You know, Timber has to play right back in Ben White's absence. I'm so adamant that that's the case. I really hope that Arteta does it. I just do not want to see Partey at right back. You know, you can play Zinchenko there. I know he won't, but you can play Zinchenko there. You can play Kivior there. I mean, Kieran Tierney's maybe back. You know, throw Kieran in. Miles Lewis-Skelly's there, but there are options. You don't need to play Timber out of position just because.
What about if you could name a midfield three of Rice, Merino, Odegaard? Would you then be happy playing Partey at right back?
No, I just think it limits you there because you're basically playing in a midfielder at right back and you're playing a right-footed player at left back. So it just limits you attacking wise. I just don't, because Partey's not going to get up there and support Saka too much, and you know, it's just not comfortable doing that. And Timber, for all of his immense talent, is still not entirely comfortable on the left-hand side going up there and getting in support of Martinelli. I just think it impacts the team too much negatively when you do that. So why would you just play Timber where he's strongest, where he can get forward and support Bukayo Saka? I mean, you think back, I think the one game Timber played at right back so far this season. Yeah, no, there was a Premier League game as well. It was the Leicester game, the 4-2. I think he set up Martinelli's goal, didn't he? When he got down the right side. I think I was looking at the stats for that game. It's like 8 key passes, 1 assist. You know, he was just a completely different proposition, which is understandable because he's more comfortable and he's on his natural side. So play him there, and then you've got all of those left back options. You've got to be able to find one who can play, who you're happy with playing that, rather than just really messing up the whole thing in the team. I'd be surprised if we see Rice, Odegaard, Merino for this game. I think Partey still plays. I think it'll probably be Rice and Odegaard. I'm not ruling it out, but I'd be surprised. I still think this is probably, if they're all fit, this is probably the midfield we'll see for now. I'm talking about, and then yes, that Saka, Martinelli, and Havertz up front. So that's what I'm leaning towards now. Before hearing what he's got to say at his press conference tomorrow,
I think you will see Merino for Partey. That would be my only change to this team, assuming we don't, you know, based on what we know now. I think this team probably needs a bit more attacking oomph. And while, I mean, what's also true is that the sort of threat that Forest are going to pose on the counter, you probably want someone a bit more mobile, like Declan Rice, at the base of your midfield. I think we will see almost, with Odegaard pretty much playing every game, I think we'll see the midfield configuration change a lot between now and Christmas. It'll be certain players will get a run, then another. But I think this might be a game that really suits the Rice, Odegaard, Merino tandem and gives Arsenal a bit more going forward, which they're going to need, because you're going to need to be able to put pressure on the Forest box and have a lot of tall guys in there who can win your headers. But I mean, that for me is probably, assuming full fitness, the only real thing that I'm unsure on, because you may well be right too.
Champions League Tuesday night, obviously travelling away to Portugal, play Sporting. Do you think that will enter his mind at all? I don't think it will. It doesn't tend to, does it, when he picks his starting 11? I don't think he'll think about
that. I don't think so. The pressure is so, and certainly I think we'd see what he would consider his best team in the Premier League. The pressure is so severe, and I mean, Arsenal could do with picking up some points quite quickly to get in the mix for the top 8. But there's much more of a sort of safety net there than there is in the Premier League right now.
Yeah. Who've Liverpool got this weekend? I'm just searching. Southampton.
Yeah. There's 3 points.
Yeah. And then it's Man City. It's Liverpool, Man City following weekend. At Anfield, though. Yeah. Big week coming up.
Come on, Russell Martin.
Yeah. Aaron Ramsdale, masterclass keeping out Mo Salah. That would be nice. Right. Let's move on to some questions and comments that have been sent in now for the second part of this show. Always enjoy this one. The sort of predictions. I remember last year we did this around January 1st, and we basically had Arsenal not dropping a point, and we're kind of laughing at the end of it.
We weren't that
going to happen, and we weren't far off at all. I think we both put defeats at Man City, and obviously I think we would have both put wins against Villa. But other than that, I think we'd have been pretty close. to do it to get in that spot on. So let's go through it now. These are the games, obviously including we got the Palace Cup game, and some of the Champions League. So let's just go in order of the Premier League so far. We'll do the Premier League games, okay? Forest, win. West Ham,
win.
United, Fulham,
draw, win.
Draw, win. What do you mean?
Draw. United. Draw against United. Win against Fulham.
Oh, okay. You changed. Draw against United. No, not having that. We're going to beat Man United.
No.
Everton,
win.
Palace.
Oh, huge win
in the league. Ipswich, win. So you got 19 points from 21 there.
And I'm not very optimistic about Arsenal. Yeah.
See, I think I maybe I'm just being overly optimistic, but I really think that's 21 points from 21. I don't think it'll be easy, and I think they'll have to build up a little bit ahead of steam. There's a strong correlation here. Do you remember the City ground last season? 2-1. It was in January. I think it was just after Dubai. Jesus. It was last time Jesus scored. He scored and got an assist, and we won 2-1. And then I'm sure the next game was West Ham, the 6-0. Just have a look.
Let me have a look. I've got all the games here. Forest? No, it was Liverpool then West Ham.
Oh, of course, you had that Liverpool game that was absolutely essential. Yeah, so it was like the Forest game you ground out, then the Liverpool one was like the lift-off moment, wasn't it? That sort of sparked it all. So, but then it was West Ham away. I see. So I kind of look at that Forest game last season at City Ground is very similar to what this one needs to be, because that came on after that awful sort of festive period that Arsenal had going into the new year. And then they found some form, got that win, and then that was a real sort of springboard moment for them to go on.
Where do you see the banana skin among the Premier League games?
Fulham away, definitely. I look at Fulham. We knew Fulham last season but that's awful display of Fulham. But I look at Fulham this season; they're just a good team. You look at the dominance we're on the ball, and they control games. From what I've seen from them, they really control games. They control the ball, and that's not going to be an easy game. And obviously, you get a narrative of Emile Smith-Rowe and everything like that. But out of all of them, I see that as the biggest banana skin. We don't know what Man United are going to be like, I suppose, if they're going to have an immediate lift-off. I mean, they're in decent form now, United anywhere. They were under Rude, obviously, but we'll see what Amorim brings to them. And if they can get a sort of head of steam up, then that might be a difficult game. But I look at, Forest will be tough, but I think you win that. I think West Ham, as long as you play well and you don't do anything stupid, you win that game. United, I see them winning. Like I said, Fulham's the banana skin. Everton, as long as you get the first goal against Dice, you expect that should be a win. Palace away, Ipswich home. Palace obviously will be on their top 4 run at that point for you.
It's all coming together.
Back-to-back games against Palace as they find their form and go and make themselves in the top 4. So, yeah, I just think 19 points has got to be, in my view. You can have one slip up maybe in that run, but if you're not getting 19 from 21 there when you're already 9 points behind in the title race, I think you're struggling. I really do. So it's imperative that Arsenal get the results. So they're the predictions. What about the cup games? Sporting away, that's going to be really tough.
Really tough. But I think Arsenal will win.
This is a team that steamrolled Man City 4-1 the other day. Have they played without Amorim yet? Have they had a game without him? Or is this weekend going to be the first?
Because he left straight after the international break, didn't he?
So is this going to be
promoted from within? So I feel like you would assume that's the plan. There is we don't change too much. But
they've got Amarante tomorrow on Friday night. Nicely moved to give them an extra day's rest, as always is away in European.
Sporting away is Wednesday.
Tuesday 8:00.
Can't afford to draw though, really, if you're Arsenal.
I don't know. I think you can draw that. I think you draw that game, win the others, draw that one. I think
win the other. So draw that one. We'll put you on 8, and then another 9, 17. I think you'd be right on the cusp then.
Top 8?
Maybe a draw.
You're talking about top 8, yeah. I'm just not overly bothered about top. I mean, it would be nice, but I know. I'm just like, obviously that'd be a bonus if you don't have 2 extra games, but I'm not. If Arsenal don't get top 8 in that, I'm not going to shed any tears. I don't think. I still think they'll have enough to get through the 2-legged game after that. So I'm not overly concerned about top 8, which I think says a lot about this Champions League format and the excitement it's supposed to bring that it's not bringing. And then Palace at home in the EFL Cup win. Got to be winning that.
No, Yeah, why not? Yeah,
Got to be winning that. Yeah, they've got to win
you
it.
missed Monaco. You think Arsenal will beat Monaco?
I think they'll beat Monaco. Yes,
Balogun-less Monaco. I think it'll be.
He's injured at the moment, isn't he, Flo?
Yeah,
Be a shame
just
if
as
he
he was
misses.
getting some form going.
It'd be a shame if he misses his return to the Emirates. But yeah, Carabao Cup. I was talking about this. I had Dave Seeger on the show yesterday, and we were talking about the Carabao Cup. We both think it's really, really important. You know, now Arsenal put themselves in this position, home game against Palace in the quarterfinal. You've got to go and try and win this competition now. Take it really, really seriously. I think it'd be really important for this squad if they could get themselves a trophy in February.
Yeah, 100%.
Really, really important, I think. So I think all guns blazing for the Carabao Cup this year. I think so. Thank you very much there, Pradeep Tog. I think I'm not sure. I probably absolutely butchered that, so apologies. But thanks for that. Always a bit of fun. So we're basically predicting an unbeaten fun fest between now and January the 1st.
And do you know who's on January the 1st?
Sorry, you said Arsenal going to lose at Sporting, didn't you? No, you said win. Actually,
no, draw. I thought win, but I've come around to draw.
I think draw.
You know what January the 1st is? It screams defeat.
Brighton, isn't it?
Defeat. Brentford away.
Oh, Brentford
then
away.
Brighton away 3 days later.
Yeah. It's weird.
A Wednesday night North London derby at the Emirates.
Yeah, I know.
In January.
Not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. Man United is 8:15 p.m. as well, which I'm absolutely not a fan of. Not a fan of that.
If anyone from the Premier League watches this would like to explain to me how it is that every 15 minutes they add on pre-match to the kickoff translates to 35 minutes longer until I'm out of the ground, I'd love to know.
I know.
Those go on forever, those 8:15 games.
I'm presuming that's an Amazon Prime package week, is it? Fixtures wise.
Yeah. Remember, folks, to sign up now and you get your Black Friday discounts, and then remember to cancel on Boxing Day.
I was looking at Black Friday stuff today on Amazon. Actually, right, we got one from it's Callum, isn't it? Callum. He says, I hope you're both well. We are. Thank you very much. So thinking about how important this weekend is against Forest, although I don't believe it's fully over just yet. Realistically, it's going to be a real tough ask to claw back the deficit we currently have. So in terms of the season, hypothetically, let's say we can't win the league, what constitutes a successful season to you both? For me, a real hard push at winning the CL and trying to improve on last year, and I believe we have to win a minimum of one of domestic cup competitions. Would be lovely to have both and finish in the top 3. So yeah, what would you consider a successful season if Arsenal don't win the league?
Trophy. And the inverse of that, I think we have got to the stage now where it's a failure to not win a trophy. And I think that winning the EFL Cup would only be a sort of qualified success. It would have to come alongside really reviving a title challenge, even if it falls short, and making a bit of a better account of yourself in the Champions League. And that, I think, would be a success. I think the silverware element of it is really important. And broadly, I would be pretty unforgiving of a season that doesn't end with any silverware. Now, when I think people, when you say it's like a failure, they immediately think that means the manager should get sacked. I wouldn't say that, but I would sort of say that he has failed this season to live up to the expectations we would have for him, he would have for himself. And the players would, the same thing for them. Trophy, very, very important.
What about you? Same. This is a season to win something. If it's not the league, they've got to try and win something. I agree. I think there's a difference between what you consider a success or what you consider a disaster. And should Arsenal finish outside the top 4, and this poor run of form continues, and they flop and end up finishing 6th or something like that, then I think you're certainly looking at it as a failure, even if they do win the Carabao Cup. But if they don't win the league, but they go close again and they go deep into the Champions League and they win the Carabao Cup, I think I wouldn't be dancing. I'd struggle to see an open top bus parade for that, but I think it would be acceptable. But
here's a question. The sort of the people that are still on X and like to shout about how long it's been, longest trophy drought in however long. If Arsenal won the Carabao Cup, what would they shout about then? Because they would shout, obviously, because it's an act.
Yeah, but I can see. I never necessarily think a trophy is like. I don't think Man United had a have had 2 better seasons than Arsenal, and yet Erik ten Hag had trophies in those 2 seasons, But I don't look at what the 2 seasons had and wish I had Man United's season, which is weird because they obviously had the League Cup and then they had the FA Cup and they had trophy to shout about. But if I was a fan of either of those 2 clubs, I'd feel much, much better at the end of each of the seasons in terms of where my club is as an Arsenal fan. But ultimately, United have put 2 trophies in a trophy cabinet and Arsenal have put nothing. So I think it's really hard just to judge purely on trophies. But I think Arsenal are at a stage in their development now where it's like, what is the next thing they can do? It's not. It's tough to continue to progress because they're already right there. They're right at the top of the tree. So they've got to actually now show they can get themselves over the line and win it. So yeah, it's hard to deem what I would consider a successful season right now. I don't think you can. It's like last season they didn't win anything, and I don't think that could have been a success. But I don't think it was a bad season. I think it was they showed how good they were last season, and they showed they were a top side, even though they didn't win anything. So it's really tough to consider what I would deem a success. I think they definitely need silverware. If they didn't win silverware, I'd be very disappointed, and I know that they would be very disappointed as well. That's what the whole thing is set up for. Everyone went into this season thinking it. Even Bukayo Saka said it publicly, didn't he? Not so long ago, he said, now's the time to win, and he's absolutely right. It is the time to win. It'd be great to see them go really deep in the Champions League as well and show they belong in that competition.
I had to cut a sort of follow-up quote I got when I interviewed him. I spoke to him a little bit about why he said that and what he thought it might mean, and we ended up running that bit of the interview after the Newcastle defeat, and I was just like, you're gonna need to cut that section. It makes Bukayo look quite I don't know what the right word is there, but it doesn't reflect well on Bukayo if he's talking about trophy winning aspirations after, like, in that context, after back-to-back defeats.
Right, Gordon here gets in touch. Hi guys, just wondering if you saw the comments from Anders Limpar about Gyokeres. I think he's definitely worth a punt in January if money is available and we're not held to ransom. Probably a cheaper option to Isak. I like the way, definitely a punt in January. I mean, you're talking about a minimum 80 million probably punt. It's hard to describe that sort of investment as worth a punt. He's making it very hard to ignore it.
What did Anders Limpar say?
I don't actually know. I did see it, but I can't. Let me find it.
I mean, you're like the biggest Anders Limpar
He's
fan.
My favorite. He's one of my favorite players.
You had him on Google Alerts.
I did read it because it was a couple of days ago. It was doing the rounds. Let me just make sure I get it right. I know him
very well personally. I was a bit of a mentor for him, so I've talked a lot about professional life with him. If we at Arsenal were to buy Gyokeres, then he would definitely call me. But then to see Gyokeres at Arsenal, that would be crazy. His work rate, he runs like a madman. When it doesn't work out for Viktor, he works his way into the game. I mean, yeah, pretty glowing assessment. Agent Anders.
Anders as well. I've got Anders' number. I should give him a ring and tap him up to
really should
to get him on board. I mean, he's making it very hard. I'm still on the out of the two of them. It's what an embarrassment of riches for Sweden. Imagine your 2 forwards are Gyokeres and Isak. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, look, every single week now he seems to be. It's ridiculous. I mean, another 4 goals in midweek for Sweden. I think he's up to 32 already. We're not even in December yet, and he scored 32 goals. I mean, he's on pace for about a 70, 80 goal season, I think, at the moment. It's definitely going to move in the summer. It's just,
what?
I don't see it. Well, he's already said, actually, he came out this week, didn't he, after the Sweden game, saying he's not going to move in January, I think he said.
Himself. Yeah, everyone says that.
Yeah. And he's got a release clause as well. So if someone triggers that release clause in January, then he's got a decision to make, isn't he?
So if he was to be your top target, and like when we know Mikel and the Cronkies and Richard Garlick have been out discussing summer transfer business. If he's your top target, and maybe the sort of thing you have about him is he's 26, not 22, or younger, like Sesko is, I think go and get him in January. Damn the models, damn the finances of it all, if you can. And you need to get as much of his prime as possible, because you would be paying that kind of on the assumption you're not going to get much resale value. I think if you're in Arsenal's position, that's absolutely fine. And like I said to you last week on our show, I think you can fit him into an Arsenal team that has Kai Havertz at number 9. He drifts out to the left. you can play him as a number 9 as well. It gives you all those options. And so I would even be prepared to pay a premium for him in January if you think he's the guy. I worry about Isak's injury record. Maybe it's because I've just been looking up Reece James a lot.
He's got injured again, Reece James. He's out for this weekend, another hamstring. A lot of people flag up Isak's injury record. You're certainly not alone in that. I'm still just about on Isak, but I mean Gyokeres is very, very tough to ignore what he's doing. It just makes it. I just think it's mad that he only scored 20 goals in Championship for Coventry, given what he's done since he's left Coventry. And his goal record has just been so unbelievable. I look at his record for Cov and think, why did he only score 20 odd goals in that league? Shows the quality of the Championship, maybe. But yeah, I mean he looks a hell of a talent, absolutely. And I would certainly be excited if Arsenal did pull the trigger on him, but. Whether they do, I can't see it happening in January. I really can't. I think if they do something, it'll be in the summer. But maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised when it comes to the January transfer window. But I have to admit, I'm not expecting too much at the moment. Right, we've got one from George now. Says, what do you think the biggest differences are in terms of the playing style and what's changed this season compared to the run of 19 games in 22-23 and at the end of last season? He says, I think the previous 2 seasons we played more attractively, scoring lots of goals, etc. Ever since our statistic for goals from corners, free kicks came out, we almost didn't score a goal from a set-piece situation. We all know the problems of injuries, suspensions this season, but I still think our game looks like it's not finally settled. It's almost like we see random pieces from different puzzles. See, I know what you're saying, George, but I have to say, I still look at the start Arsenal made this season, and I do kind of think it mirrors a lot of what they did last season. It wasn't until January onwards that everything clicked. I know last season they were trying to fit new players in where maybe that didn't work. Like we obviously had Kai Havertz for a fair while trying to fill the Granit Xhaka void. It didn't work. And then when you finally changed that and you moved him up front and you played Declan there, things started to happen. And you haven't really done that. It's been more continuous, or the attempt was for it to be more continuous this season. The injuries have obviously stopped that as much. I still look at everything for this season, and just injuries is at the top of my reasoning for why Arsenal have struggled. I just really do. It's been so disruptive. There've been so many key players. The defence has constantly changed. You've been without your captain and your playmaker for almost the entirety of the season. You've played with 10 men in 3 of the 11 games so far. Now, it's just impossible to ignore those. And you don't want to use them as excuses, but it is impossible to ignore that as a reasoning why Arsenal haven't been at their best this season.
Yeah, they are excuses. They're just valid excuses. I mean, I'm just looking at the list of games here. You probably have to go back to the Brighton game for the last time Arsenal were at full strength and full fitness. And it hasn't just been 1 or 2 injuries, and it's been injuries like hitting them in the same spot and to the most important players. And that didn't happen last season, really. Arsenal always got lucky or managed their squad well and didn't get injured. So I think it's that. And I like you, and kind of when we're looking at those fixtures, I think we can see in this team a team that can go and rattle off 7 wins on the spin. And if they do that, they're right back in it. Probably.
And finally, one from Tata here on Arda Guler, who I spoke about on today's show. Obviously, the rumours coming out of Spain, reports coming out of Spain linking Arsenal with Odegaard-type loan move for Guler with views to potentially a permanent deal. He says he would love Guler at Arsenal. Amazing talent, would add so much firepower and creativity to the midfield. Long term, I believe that Guler and Ranieri can fit in the same squad. See, I was saying sort of long term, I looked at this and looked at Guler's best position and just think there's an awful lot of similarities there to where Ranieri plays. And so while I wouldn't be against a loan move till the end of this season, I kind of look at bringing in a 19-year-old playing almost the exact same profile as Ranieri. It doesn't make much sense to me. But a lot of people have disagreed in the comments that I've had from today's show. This is just sort of one of them there. Where would you stand on Guler? And again, these are just reports that are just beginning to emerge from Spain and haven't been verified by anyone over here yet. So,
and from the Barcelona side of Spain as well.
Yeah,
I should say. I love him. One of my favourite players to watch at the Euros. I think he's a superstar talent. I know that Arsenal were really following him closely, not just when he was at Fenerbahce, but when he was at the club before. That I looked up while you were talking, and I Gençler Birliği, I think is how you pronounce it. Apologies to any Turkish listeners. I know Arsenal have scouted him a lot But like you say, I just don't think of it as an area of need, considering what Real Madrid would surely charge to buy him. If anything were to ever happen with Martin Odegaard, where he left, I'd be saying get Arda Guler, get someone like that. Really, really, really like him, but just not where Arsenal's absolute priority should be. But it would be very fun to have him in the squad. Be a bit it's like Wenger buying Mesut Ozil, isn't it? Didn't need him. Would be fun.
Loan move to the end of the season, I wouldn't be against that. I have to say, if Real, I mean, it makes sense. If he's not playing much at Real, so if they would be open potentially a loan move, I can see Arsenal maybe going down that route if it was available. And I do think he could add something to the squad. But just sort of long-term permanent view, I'm just not sure, because you've got to factor Ranieri into it, haven't you? I mean, they have tried to leave a pathway there for Ethan. If you're suddenly then bringing in a 19-year-old, a kid who's just a couple of years your senior, it basically in your position, it just doesn't make too much sense to me. He can play on the right, which is maybe if this was legit and they are looking at him, maybe they're looking at him more as a, Saka cover rather than someone who plays more central. But yeah, I don't know. Sort of permanent wise, I'm not sure.
Do you know who else is playing hardly any minutes for Real Madrid and could do with a developmental loan away? I haven't quite decided which answer I'm going to give you for this.
No, who?
There's two options I can offer you. I can offer you Dani Ceballos, a barely used Dani Ceballos, 78 minutes in La Liga. But the one I quite like, and I don't know if you saw he was linked with Southampton in the week, Endrick has only played 55 minutes in La Liga.
Yeah, I saw that about Endrick.
Now that would fill a position of need.
Yeah,
and
but why has he only played 55 minutes for in La Liga this season? I suppose you're going to say.
I don't know if you've heard of this guy. They bought
Mbappe. Yeah, but still. Yeah, maybe that is he was. There was. I swear I saw Arsenal linked with him randomly this week as well as Southampton. I'm sure I saw Arsenal mentioned in there.
If we are getting close to January. If they could get him in on Friday.
Friday, yeah. We are getting close to January, so I think we're going to see lots more of these sort of stories doing the rounds between now and then. Bring them on, because we all love a transfer story, don't we? Look, I think that's about it for today, isn't it? We're 52 minutes, mate. I think it's time to call time on this one. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for listening and for watching. And we'll be back next week to do it all over again, probably in between the Sporting games and the West Ham game, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll be back in the morning to do my usual show. Anything you want me to discuss, get down into the comments and leave the questions below. Until then, cheers for joining me, James. Have a great weekend. I'll speak to you very soon.
My pleasure. Speak soon. Bye-bye.